First, I think we should all thank the chairs of this conference, Chair Tremec and Matjaž Mikoš, all the co-chairs who took care of the sessions, of the parallel sessions, the staff of the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering, the staff of the engineering chambers, all the people who were helping to make this conference a success. Let's give them all a hand of applause. I would first like to ask Mr. Carlos Mineiro Aires, President of the World Council of Civil Engineers, to give his closing words to the forum on behalf of the WCCE. Mr. Aires, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Žiga Turk. I would like to address to Professor Kotmir Remek, President of the Slovenian Chamber of Engineers, and also Vice President of the World Federation of Engineer Organization, as well to Professor Inconke, the President-elect of the World Federation of Engineer Organization. And I apologize for those I will not mention, but in these persons I'll address my compliments and to all of you. Distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, it's for me an honor on behalf of the World Council of Civil Engineers to be here addressing these words in the closing ceremony. And in fact, it's a double honor because I'm also the president of the Portuguese Engineer Association of Portugal, so I'm really happy for being here. First of all, I would like to congratulate for the organization of this World Constitution Forum, because and I want to thank to all that have contributed for the excellent organization and also for the selection of the themes that have been under discussion. And although they are not exhaustive, they are up to date and they constitute an excellent and sufficient approach to the role of civil engineering in an increasing global world. So energy, resources efficiency, digital solutions, cultural heritage, disaster risk management, and so on are excellent options that certainly were appreciated and contributed to the promotion of the role of construction and civil engineers. Congratulations also for the Ljubljana Declaration, because in my opinion it's a very good statement because he approaches the main issues and the actual problems and the challenge that we are facing. The forum also assures the exchange of knowledge and practice, but also the contact with the new challenge and visions in construction. And in other side, the inclusion of the United States Nations SDGs is the demonstration of how much important they are for engineering activities. More and more cooperation and exchange of knowledge are crucial. A civil engineer is one of the most important and respected activity in the world, and civil engineers are fundamental players in growing and well-being, as well in the improvement of life quality and sustainable development. Civil engineer is also, and we can't forget it, a very important economic partner in each country, and perhaps the most employment is generated by civil and construction activities. I think that wherever we were born or wherever we work, the society and our fellow citizens certainly have a debt of gratitude due to our work. The work that were made in our country, in each country, is due to the civil engineers and to the constructions. We cannot forget that in addition, we are also respected professionals that who deserve public trust, which implies a solid academic background and special auto requirement on ethical and behavior principles. Of course, that we are living a moment with important change and development in a new global interactivity, but also great challenge to solve the older and persistent problems. Engineers are protagonists of innovation, but fighters for a better world. Due to my experience as professional or associative in my association, namely in Europe, Africa, Central and South America, I'm worried about some issues that we shared in our meetings, and I think that we must look carefully to them. Of course, we have new paradigms in engineer education. It's with joy that I see in the statement, in the declaration, an approach to the teaching of engineer in primary schools, because I think it's important. We cannot give up the good quality of engineer teaching, knowledge and technical capacity that is the civil engineer's level. But unfortunately, I can constate that in some countries, beginning by my own country, the way that is being pursued is losing value. Society and citizens must believe in civil engineer capacity to solve their basic needs and their concerns, namely the protections against natural disasters. At these moments, I must remember, looking to Mr. Martin Manua, the cyclone Idai that devastated Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, in an event that I think it is an expectable consequence of climate change. It was a really disaster with millions of people affected and thousands of deaths. And of course, there must be a new solution for these countries in these areas. And Portugal has offered the engineer service to help them. So there are more challenges that we face. We must have special attention to the lack of public investments in the most of the countries, to the low salaries and uncertainty in the future that the young people is facing. Especially young students and engineers must be very well explained what's happened to combat the lack of demand in civil engineering university education. We must insist and act permanently in the global promotion of our profession, as well increasing the involvement of women in engineering and appealing to young people for a just, noble career. Ethical behaviors, social responsibility, and fight against corruption, because the world is not the paradise that we imagine. Permanent involvement by our side in combat to climate change, the most important global challenge, and in the words of the actual Secretary General of the United Nations, protecting the environment and also promoting practices of circular economy and material, hydric and energy efficiency. Natural resources are not finite. We must be strongly engaged to achieve the rest of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. If you look carefully, in all of them there are an involvement and a need from engineers. Even in those some, I think it's only one that is not related directly with engineering, but engineer in even that as a work to do. But I'm finishing, but I would like to say that as referred in the WCCA mission, civil engineers' education and skills must guarantee the contribution to improve living conditions for all mankind. And this can be achieved more easily if civil engineers worldwide share their knowledge and experience in the application of technical progress to economic and social advancement through the world. I think that's exactly what we've been doing in this World Construction Forum. The best way to do it, I think, it's as everything in our lives, is to work together and cooperate with those that are involved with same purpose, same objectives, and with those that needs cooperation and help. For finishing now, I would like to ask you your attention for the leading of a very strong civil engineers organization, because we are the largest in number in engineers, and the World Council of Civil Engineers must have representation and a role on the representation on this professional that I cannot forget at this moment. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for inviting me to be here at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayres. And now I would like to ask Professor Gong Ki, President-elect of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, to give his closing speech for this conference.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we, the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, is very pleased to be part of this World Construction Forum 2019. And we have witnessed the big success of this forum by the successful collaboration between the Slovenia Chamber of Engineers, the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering Department of University of Slovenia, the World Federation of WFU, and all co-organizers, sponsors, staff, volunteers, and nevertheless all participants from all over the world. We jointly make the big success. The success is not only in gathering engineers from more than 50 countries all over the world, but also in the fruitful exchanges of the ideas, knowledge, good practices, and lessons learned on the themes such as energy in the 21st century, the cultural heritage in digital world, the construction 4.0 from the industry 4.0, the disaster management and the governance for a resilient community, and the digital engineered built environments and engineering capacity building. These topics look very diversified, but I believe all of them are oriented to the same goal. That is the goal of sustainable development and to build a resilient society, resilient world. Keeping the UN Sustainable Development Goals in mind, we do see a big gap between the reality and the goals. As stated by the United Nations Agenda for 2030, it is said to have a universal access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy services, sustainable transport systems, and quality and resilient infrastructure. To reduce the gap and approach to these goals, we engineers have to work harder and collaborate closer, interdisciplinary and international. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations is ready to work with you together and to mobilize engineers of the whole world to implement the sustainable goals set by the United Nations. Here, please allow me to cite some words from the UN 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. It reads, "The future of the humanity and of our planet lies in our hands. It lies also in the hands of today's younger generation, who will pass the torch to future generations. We have mapped the road to sustainable development. It will be for all of us to ensure that the journey is successful and its gains irreversible." In this context, I trust that we all agree that the ending of this forum is a new start of the journey with the Ljubljana Declaration on buildings and infrastructure resilience. So please allow me now officially declare the closing of this forum and begin the new start. And I would like to extend the warmly welcome invitation to the Melbourne, to the World Engineering Convention 2019 on 20th to 22nd November in Melbourne, Australia. Thank you so much.
We had, as I said, exciting 2 days, for some 2.5 days. 2.5 days. And we made new friendships, we got a host of new ideas, maybe we met new partners for joint projects or people we would like to be connected with. In every scientific conference, in every conference, something like that happens. But we believe that times call for something more, that the demands for what civil engineers and other engineers are expected to do in the future call for something more. And this more is the Ljubljana Declaration on Buildings and Infrastructure Resilience. And let me just briefly go through this declaration. You have seen the text. I have seen you reading through it. It has been on Google Drive for a couple of weeks. It's been distributed to all of you. Before the conference, we have received a couple of, well, not a couple, but a few edits and suggestions. Some were even coming today or during the conference. I think it's important that something remains behind this conference, something remains that kind of demonstrates the responsibility of us, of engineers, for the future of our planet. I would like to point out to the bullet point number 2 because this context of the point number 1 has been well explained by our 2 speakers in this session. There are 7.5 billion people on this planet that need homes, workplaces, clean water, sanitations, buildings, infrastructure, and this infrastructure and buildings and everything, it needs to be safe and operational in any time. We have to feed 7.5 billion people, and this requires irrigation and other support systems for agriculture. Climate change, which is affecting every country, every continent, every branch of economy, calls for measures to adaptation to warmer weather and to more volatile climate, as well as measure for the reduction of the emission of greenhouse gases. And last but not least, aging populations, particularly in the developed world, call for some improvements in our residential and transportation infrastructure. And we as participants are aware of all that. We are aware that most of this will have to be delivered by the construction sector, or that the bulk of it will have to be delivered by the construction sector. And of course, there will be some nice gadget and things added by other industries. And it is our responsibility to do this. We are also aware that construction is an important economic driver. It's an industry that employs. It's an industry that creates places that employ other people. So we will contribute to that, and we pledge to contribute to that as well. We will be contributing, we pledge to contribute to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, to the 2018 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and of course, last but not least, to the Sendai Framework for Disaster and Risk Reduction. The declaration that you are seeing is consistent with the strategic goal of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations and all other organizations that are bringing together engineers, architects, businesses in our field. The participants have anonymously agreed that the Sustainable Development Goals could only be achieved in the long term by being sustainable across the value chains, across the processes, across the industries. And at the conference, the participants have been, it has been the fil rouge of so many presentations, of so many talks, how what researchers do, what businesses do, can be tied with all these goals that have been explained before. There have been several topics, or there have been 6 topics basically that this conference has been broken into, and there are a couple of suggestions, a couple of recommendations for each of those topics. On energy, we are aware that there will be a growing need for electricity, that there will be a growing need for energy which is a little bit more complicated to make than just heat. And it will be an opportunity for our businesses, it will be an opportunity for us to create, install, and make safe all these new facilities. And of course, energy, the best energy is those that you save to use, that you do not have to use, that you conserve. And again, it will be the construction industry that will be providing for that. Construction 4.0. Industry 4.0 may be a fashionable topic, but it motivates us. It brings together technologies. It brings construction sector into this race of digitalization, which we cannot escape. And if it will not be the construction professionals, the construction researchers, the construction companies who are implementing construction 4.0 or industry 4.0 type of solutions, who else will do that? If we don't do that, we will be marginalized and we would be kind of subcontractors to the electrical, mechanical, and all these engineers that would just have to have some structures on which they could put their fancy sensors and stuff. Recommendations on cultural heritage. This field too has been digitized. And there's a wide range of possibilities of what you can do with the digital preservation of things. But of course, digital is one thing. It is inside the computers, it's inside the machines. Digital has to be used to preserve the heritage which exists in material and which exists in a tangible form. Recommendations on disaster risk management and governance for resilient communities. Resilience has been the kind of core topic of this conference. And it cannot be overstressed how important it is that what we do is resilient, because what we do is the basic infrastructure. It is the difference between life and death. It's not the difference between life and death if your Windows laptop crashes, or your phone does not work, or if you run out of battery. It's not a problem running out of battery, it is a problem of running out of clean water, or of heating power, or if the building collapses, like Professor Pfeiffer explained very nicely in his keynote speech. Recommendation on engineering capacity building. There will be work to be done in the future by engineers and architects and construction professionals. It will be more demanding, it will be more important, it will be more important for the well-being of our societies. So we will need good engineers. And having good engineers, as this recommendation here says, it does not start at the faculties of engineering. It starts much earlier. It starts in making smart kids interesting in tinkering with engineering stuff, with toys that are kind of engineering. It starts in primary schools and grammar schools, where a lot of the engineering topic and subject that my generation was listening to, was exposed to, people are now not exposed to anymore, and they study all kinds of stuff, but not the stuff that makes life of citizens, life of people better. And of course, we are teachers at a university. A lot of us are researchers. And we too need to reform. We too need to adapt. Maybe 50 years ago, construction was rather static, not much changed in how you put a brick on top of the brick or how you create a formwork. But with the digitalization, robotics, smart buildings, smart cities, and so on, a lot is changing, and engineers will need to learn for their whole life. So what we must teach them is, future engineers, we must teach them to learn, how to learn, where to look for stuff. We are not telling them everything that they will ever need to know. Last but not least, recommendation on the building information modeling. Creating building information models and digital twins is now becoming also the centerpiece of Construction 4.0. It's becoming the centerpiece of this fusion between the digital and the material. And it is important to bring that idea forward and to base all our decisions in simulations, in models that are created in silico before they are made in concrete or in steel. So some of these recommendations are for us in this room. A lot of the recommendations are for governments. A lot of recommendations are also related to policymakers, for creators of research agendas in the European Union, within countries. I think as engineers who are used to do and solve problems with the means they have, I think we can pledge we will do our part. This does not mean that we don't expect all the others to do their part as well. But I think to do the pledge, to do our part, and to call on all the others, I would invite you to adopt this declaration with an applause. Thank you very much. I now consider the 2019 Ljubljana Declaration on Buildings and Infrastructure Resilience adopted. And now I would like to ask Professor Matjaž Mikoš, Mr. Črtomen Remec, and Professor Gonki to get to the stage and let us create a kind of historic photo of the three of you plus the declaration. Yeah. The background is coming. The background is coming. Taking this photo was the last official act of this conference, so now I can declare it officially closed. Thank you very much.